evening from Los Angeles, California. I'm Dr. Ryan Abba. We are just 2 days from the final election of the 2022 cycle, where the Democratic incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock is facing off against his Republican challenger, Herschel Walker. The Georgia high-stakes and high-drama Senate race over time is nearly over, with more than 1.8 million early voters already casting their ballots, and all eyes are on this Tuesday. The latest CNN poll shows Senator Raphael Warnock holding a narrow lead heading into this final stretch. And on the ground, there have been long lines at the polls, and momentum seems to be at the moment with the Democrats, who are outspending Republicans by 2-1 on the airwaves.
In this race now, it's boiled down to kind of the basics, really, which is are voters going to default to the candidate who is in the opposition party, not in the leadership of the Senate, running on this issue of the economy, or are they going to focus on this? This is a CNN poll recently that asks voters, which candidate do you think is well qualified? Warnock, with a 25-point advantage over Herschel Walker, has good judgment, 17-point advantage, would effectively represent Georgia, a 9-point advantage, and has the right priorities, a 6-point advantage. I mean, that's really what on the Walker, the Warnock side, it boils down to.
For sure. And despite all that, the race is still very close because it is Georgia and it is a key battleground state. And look, even though the Senate control is not necessarily hanging on Georgia, it matters tremendously for Senate committees and the makeup of the Senate for subpoena power, et cetera. But the real question is those ticket splitters back in November, a month ago, who voted for Brian Kemp, the Republican governor, and then Senator Warnock, the Democratic senator, are they going to basically leave their votes the same, or will some of them sort of change because of that check on the Biden administration? So the Democrats are in pretty confident, but not overly confident, because the voting period was shorter. The early voting period was shorter. So going in, there are some unknowns, but there's no doubt that some Republicans are not thrilled with how Herschel Walker's been campaigning in the final days. As Eva was saying, he's been pretty absent.
Yeah, the entire reason, to Jeff's point, that we are in this situation of a runoff is because 200,000 voters voted for Kemp and not for Warnock. So the question is not only are those folks going to come back out for the guy who they dissed on the ballot the first time, but are the folks who actually just marked a straight Republican ticket even going to come back out when so much there is not at stake here for the Republicans, meaning the Senate majority? And if you look at what's been invested or not invested over the past few weeks, outspent 2-1. Where are all the surrogates who were here for the other Republican candidates? And I think that there's just a lot less motivation to help who is considered a flawed candidate when you don't have the Senate majority at stake.
Yeah, the absence of surrogates on the Republican side is very notable. They've been trying to keep former President Trump out of the state as much as possible. But on the Democratic side, former President Obama was in Georgia and making an argument to voters that Herschel Walker just doesn't deserve to be in the Senate. Listen.
Since the last time I was here, Mr. Walker has been talking about issues that are of great importance to the people of Georgia, like whether it's better to be a vampire or a werewolf. This is a debate that I must confess I once had myself when I was 7. Then I grew up. In case you're wondering, by the way, Mr. Walker decided he wanted to be a werewolf.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, it's funny. It's funny for sure, but I wonder, though, is that argument just for the Raphael Warnock voters who really can't stand what Herschel Walker represents, or is it also trying to appeal to even some Republican voters who held their nose and might have voted for him the first time, but maybe can't make themselves do it a second time?
Yeah, you know, down the stretch, the Warnock campaign has really been trying to make this about, you know, character and competence, quote unquote, right? They continuously say this is about character and competence. Well, our candidate has that, and the Walker campaign does not. And I mean, if you look at the energy that voters have shown in this early voting period, you've seen something like 1.9 million voters have already gone out to the polls. 370 some odd million voters 370,000 voters on the last day of early voting. So you've seen, some of the rhetoric around, our candidate, Raphael Warnock, is the candidate of character and competence, be kind of effective. And of course, there's still a lot of votes left to be counted, something to the tune of 4.5 million votes in the last runoff election. But I think that they should feel, they're likely feeling very comfortable going into Tuesday.
I mean, I think what we are hearing former President Obama try to replicate is the dynamic that drove a lot of the midterm outcomes prior to this, right, a month ago. This was sort of, and you heard Mitch McConnell actually articulate it not long after the balloting, saying that like the candidates that Republicans put forth in some cases frightened voters, turned off voters. And so I think Democrats are really trying to sort of exacerbate that dynamic and bring it back and make sure that, given how close the outcome was on Election Day in Georgia, some of those Republican voters or leaning voters that were in the middle either just decide not to show up or just sort of look at what they're presented with and say, you know what, no thanks.
Yeah,
And either vote for Warnock or just don't
vote at all. Yeah, I mean, and this early vote period is really critical for the Democrats. They have to really maximize whatever advantage that they have among their constituencies. Just to take a quick look at where we are so far in early voting, women voters comprise about 56% of the electorate. In November, it was 53%. If you're a Democrat, you probably like that number. Same with black voters. They're outpacing where it ended up in November. But when you look at younger voters, it explains why you've seen Raphael Warnock hitting the college campuses nonstop in these last few days. They're trying to get that number up, most likely. And for Democrats, the argument is, as you were saying, Jeff, about the balance of power in the Senate. They need this extra vote because it makes the difference between them relying on, Raphael Warnock or a Joe Manchin.
Without question. I mean, and also, like I said earlier, on committee assignments, I mean, it really is a big deal. It's not paid attention all that much, but they've been split 50-50, Republicans and Democrats, on every committee. So Democrats having the majority will actually give them the full majority. But to take some of the Manchin and Kirsten Sinema power away, and also save some time for the vice president. She won't be having to go to the Hill every time there's
shuttle
a vote.
back and forth down Pennsylvania Avenue for Vice President Kamala Harris. Yeah, and I mean, and Joe Manchin is also pretty happy that he may not have to be in the line of fire quite as much as he used to be.
Support my work, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Also, please don't forget to hit the bell icon so you wouldn't miss any of my new videos. Thanks for watching.